Hello everyone, my name is Vijaya and today I'm really excited to share with you about Apple and Knife, a book by Intan, Paramaditha, Indonesia's own Queen of Gothic Horror. This book is a collection of short stories and actually has 13 short stories. I'm really excited to share with you why I love many of the stories in here and maybe why one or two of them don't really resonate with me. So yes, this book is actually inspired by horror fictions, and the author definitely drew inspiration from a lot of fairy tales, from local mythological creatures, local myth, local folklore. When I say local, I mean Indonesia's folklore rather than or Southeast Asians in general. But yes, that's what makes it really interesting because I've always loved elements, Nusantara elements, or even Southeast Asian elements in books, in particular, especially like the ones I mentioned before, like, you know, The Minorities by Sufyan Hakim. It actually has a vampire element in it, a Southeast Asian vampire, not your typical Dracula thing, so that's very interesting. And obviously I'm super excited. I was super excited when I actually found this book. I, for some reason, stumbled upon it online, and then I tried to look for it in Kinokuniya, and this book cost me around 52 ringgit and 90 cents. And at first I was super excited. I was really excited to read it, and then I thought it was a novel, and then I discovered it's actually a collection of short stories, and I was almost disappointed. And then I decided, you know what, just get it and just read it. It's horror fiction, what could go wrong? And I definitely love most of the stories. It's amazing collection of short story, and I have a few favorites definitely. So I'm gonna bring you through some of the stories. Actually, I wouldn't bring you through, obviously, because it's a short story. What can I say? You know, it's a short story. It's gonna finish fast. You know, there would be a risk of me spoiling it, but I'm just gonna share roughly about what of this the inspiration behind some of the stories. So The Blind Woman Without a Toe is definitely inspired by Cinderella. So this is interesting because, and also kind of mind-blowing, because you'll be like, hey, why didn't I think of it that way? There's so many perspectives that you could see it from, and it's just really interesting because you'll be like, hey, there's so much possibilities to one single story when you tell it from a different angle, from a different perspective, or even from a different character. Because the Cinderella story that we have been consuming since we were a child is a bit flat, it's a bit goody-goody, it's not realistic. Let's face it, it's not realistic. Okay, so this is actually told from the perspective of the stepsister, and it's really fascinating, and there's definitely gruesome details to it, but there are some gruesome details. But the thing is, of course, do take it with a grain of salt, because we may not agree with everything, because the stepsister is obviously gonna justify the things that they do. I'm not saying that they are right or they are wrong, but I'm just saying that things are not black and white, and I think the story weave that in perfectly. Next, we have Blood, which is definitely inspired by, you know, menstruation blood. And of course, when it comes to menstruation, there are certain taboo, stigma, even stories attached to it. And this one is actually set in a modern setting. This character works in advertising, and the topic about, you know, menstruation comes up when they were brainstorming for a campaign, discussing about a campaign for a sanitary pad. And of course, it's going to be mentioned about, you know, traditional practices that we have been taught to do, like, you know, like to rinse, to wash, and to wrap your sanitary pad in a newspaper. And of course, a certain stigma and taboo attached to it, or certain responsibility that comes with the fact that once the women, you know, start menstruating, then they start having to bear their own sins and things like that. And then of course, there's also like you know, that creature that people often scare us about, you know, about how they love blood and stuff like that. So I think that's really interesting and really fascinating. And then we have the third one is Doors. Doors is about a politician who's murdered in his favorite car. It's a Mercedes Tiger 1982 car, and the wife invites sympathy and suspicions at the same time, because she was quite calm about the husband's tragic death. It was a really tragic death. You know, you can see his genitalia, you can see his corpse. It was a very sad looking corpse, and then the circumstances surrounding the murder itself, the death itself, is very suspicious. And then as you dig into the backstory, you suddenly realize there's more to it, obviously. Not necessarily a mysterious type of events, but more of a supernatural-ish, you know. There's a third person in the picture, and then supernatural things happen and things like that, you know. And then we have fourth, we have Kuchuk Hanim. This is a story that I couldn't get myself into. I'm not really a fan of it, honestly. It's set in a very traditional era in the sense that it's not modern, I suppose. It's about this girl who's sort of like a performer or a prostitute or something in that sense, where they accept guests like travelers, like white travelers or photographers and things like that, and then she offered sex to these people, and she also has her own servant, and I couldn't really quite get into it. I guess it's just not something I'm a fan of. And then fourth, we have Scream in a Bottle. This is interesting because this is about a girl who's most probably a journalist who was trying to interview some sort of witch person who practiced witchcraft, dukun or bomo, whatever you call, and then this person just layan her, just entertain her and bring her through her work and stuff like that, and then which finally brought us to the Scream in a Bottle thing, which you will find out when you read the story. And then we have the Queen. I love this one. This is really interesting. I think I was very excited for this one because it's very related to a myth or a story that my extended family and my own father have told me about. And it's definitely famous, especially in Sundanese culture, because there's this like some sort of a sea or ocean thingy where they believe there's a mythological creature there, and then if you wear a certain color of clothing while you were there, you will probably be devoured by the sea, okay, because there's some sort of queen or mythological queen, you know. And then this is set in a contemporary setting, this story, which makes it even more interesting. So this guy, he had this weird dream, and he starts seeing a bomo, you know, like to interpret his dream, like it could be a sign, you know, and this bomo was like saying, okay, I think this is actually related to Ratu KIDUL, you know, this famous mythological queen. And so he gets himself into, you know, the whole situation of wanting to find or worship this queen and stuff like that. And then there's a certain plot twist towards the end, which is really interesting. I think this is one of my most favorites, yes, definitely. And then we have Vampire. This is very short. This is a very short story, and I love it. It's again set in a modern setting. And it's really interesting because it's about this girl who's just trying to, you know, survive in the working world. But of course, there are certain things that you have to adhere to because certain things you have to follow, you know, because you're a woman, and you know, whenever someone says you have to do something, you just have to follow. But then there's a plot twist at the end, and I'm just like, wow. Love it, just love it. And then there's some monologues in between. You kind of like wonder, what is this girl talking about, like, because it's very, very intriguing, you know. There's this monologue in her head. It's very intriguing, and then towards the end you kind of get it. Oh shit, this is so cool and revenge-ish at the same time. So yeah. And then you have Beauty and the Seven Dwarf. Beauty and the Seven Dwarf kind of disturbed me a little, creeps me out. It really creeps me out. Although I don't really get what's the relation between the whatever creature in that story with the Beauty of Ancol, because if I'm not mistaken, Ancol is a really famous case in Indonesia. I should have done my research before this, damn it. Beauty of Ancol, if I'm not mistaken, is based on a really famous case in Indonesia. This girl got raped in Ancol. Ancol's like a theme park thingy, but I don't actually quite get it. But apart from that, it's actually an interesting story, but it really creeps me out, and I'm scared, I'm terrified. And I have the well. Yeah, that's pretty okay. And then the obsessive twist. Oh, this is another one that really creeps me out. I am scared and terrified for this. But it's also interesting because it touches on how the religious community or how people in general like to judge others really, really harshly, which sometimes is not really necessary, because there's a difference between preaching and judging, and yeah, it's very interesting. And then of course there's a revenge-ish twist at the end. And then we have Porcelain Doll. That's a nice one too, but I'm not going to get into it so much because I would love to talk more about Apple and Knife. Apple and Knife is a wonderful short story. It generally touches on like how society loves to talk and gossip in general. And I see general a lot. I should stop saying that. But yeah, it's about people who likes to gossip and talk, you know, because there's about this character woman, a modern woman who works and stuff like that, and then the husband's family, relatives, aunts, you know, in general. Again, I'll stop saying general. Anyway, there's these aunts who love to talk, to gossip about her, blah blah blah, and then, you know, one day they divorce. This woman and the husband divorce, apparently because she has a affair or something like that, and then, you know, and something happened afterwards, and then it's like more of like what you talk about other people could reflect on you again. So it's very scary in that sense. So like, be careful when you gossip about others, because you, in Malay we call it termakan diri sendiri lah kot. Yes, like when the thing you talk about other people actually end up being something that you do in the end. So yeah. And I have a single firefly, 1,000 rats. This confused the heck out of me. I couldn't get into this. I do not understand. I am confused. I don't know. I just don't get it. Okay, so there's two short stories that I don't really like here. The fourth one and the last one, definitely Kuchuk Hanim and a single firefly, 1,000 rats. I don't really quite get it, but a single firefly, 1,000 rats. I actually love the storytelling. It's just that I don't quite understand what happened in the end, but that's okay, I suppose. But it's okay, I suppose. I'm just gonna reread it and see whether I get it. So if any one of you guys actually got it, please let me know. I would gladly accept the offer for an explanation. Yeah. So guys, I hope you enjoy my blabber about this book in general. It's very vague, I know. It's a short story, what else could I say? So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and goodbye and see you next time.